I'm Oliver Alferness, a 13-year-old Ear Hustle listener. The following episode of Ear Hustle contains language that may not be appropriate for all listeners. Discretion is advised.
What does the term Bonnaroo mean to you?
Bonnaroo, I've never heard of that term before.
How long you been incarcerated again?
19 years.
Have you ever heard the term Bonnaroo?
No.
But I remember that movie, Bonnaroo Banzai, something like that. It was a really silly comedy movie.
Bonnaroo means sharp, clean, on top of your game.
Yeah, Bonnaroo is when you hook your clothes up, you one of the fly guys.
I know it's got to be something, wonderful, but I can't remember right offhand.
It's the style and the way that you dress.
So can you use it in a sentence?
I'm always Bonnaroo. Every day I'm Bonnaroo.
What's your nickname?
My nickname is Bonnaroo.
Oh, man. Earlonne, it was so great to see Bonnaroo.
Of course it was. And I gotta say, he was looking pretty Bonnaroo the day we saw him.
He definitely was. And of course we had to talk to him, because getting Bonnarooed, getting all fancied up, that's what this episode is about.
And this was actually the idea of our producer, John Yaya Johnson.
Yep.
He's in the studio with us, though he's rarely Bonnaroo. Look at him right now.
Oh, I take exception. I take exception to that.
Look at that dingy T-shirt.
Hey, man.
He done washed that T-shirt with colors.
It's comfortable, though.
And
Yeah.
Yaya, tell us about your inspiration for this episode.
I wanted to do an episode where we looked at how we explored our individuality inside, especially because prison works extremely hard to rob you of your individuality. And so I think it's really interesting how guys work really hard to push back against that concept.
Like how?
It can be the way you dress, things you do to yourself, and it can be a lot bigger than that as well.
And the definition of Bonnaroo is to elevate the evolution of everything in existence.
Elevate the evolution of everything in existence. I love that.
The 4 E's.
The 4 E's. I'm Nigel Poor.
I'm John Yahya Johnson.
And I'm Earlonne Woods, who's always Bonnarooed up. This is Ear Hustle from PRX's Radiotopia.
Our friend Bonnaroo was released from prison a few months ago.
Yeah, and you know I was there to meet him at the front gate.
Of course you were. When he was inside, Bonnaroo was part of the San Quentin news team. And the one thing I remember about him is that he was always looking really sharp.
Bonnaroo was one of them cats that every time you see him, he's going to be sewing something or ironing something.
He was always creased up, right?
Always.
And his shoes. Okay. He always had on perfect shoes, no scuffs, nothing. It was like every day he put on a new pair of boots.
That was him. Got to look like glass if he going to put them on.
And apparently he already had a bit of that style when he first got to prison.
When I first entered prison back in 1991, 92, OGs used to say, oh, he's Bonnaroo. But I didn't know what the term meant. You see what I'm saying? I just like to dress. So I used to hear him say that, hey, he's Bonnaroo, and I was afraid. I'm not going to question nobody.
You don't want to know what
You know how it is when you first get to prison. No, right? So I actually started introducing myself as Bonnaroo.
So when they saying he Bonnaroo, you think that's your name?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Earlonne. I feel for this guy. I mean, I can totally see thinking, I got my prison name, and it's a really cool one. But in fact, Bonnaroo really misunderstood the situation.
How long before you found out what it meant?
Oh, man. It was embarrassing, right? It was embarrassing because it took a couple years. It took a couple years. So I was in Soledad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the bleachers, right? And, I'm sitting down with my so-called little group. And I hear somebody behind me use the term Bonnaroo. I turn around, I'm like, what's up? And they looking at me like, man, mind your business, right?
Right.
But I was like, but you called me, right? So I almost got into a confrontation behind the name, right? Until one of the dudes I was with was like, hey, man, they talking about somebody else. You know what I'm saying? I said, but they mentioned my name. You know, they mention my name.
Right.
You know what they want. You know, he's like, nah. And then he basically explained to me what Bonnaroo meant.
How did you feel inside?
Embarrassed. It was embarrassing.
Did you tell anybody, or were you just like,
No, I
I'm
didn't.
just going to
This is the first time I actually spoke on it. I was ashamed, but at the same time, I had already taken on that persona. Strangely enough, it just merged into who I was. You know, all right, I dressed the part. You know, they utilized the name. So I'm going to go ahead and just take on this persona. And that's what I did.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had a honey bun.
You start your day with that much sugar?
Yeah. I work it off, but yeah.
How old are you?
I'll be 34 this September.
Okay, that's why he can do that. After 40, you can't start your day like that.
Nah, it stays with you for the rest of your life.
Nobody should start the day like that, but I mean, I'm in prison, so I've earned that.
This is Tax. New York and I talked to him a while back in San Quentin. How many honey buns do you eat a week?
I think I did probably somewhere along 13 a week. That's twice a day-ish.
Wait, by the time you get out of prison, how many honey buns do you think you will have eaten?
Let's see, 4 years. We'll go over 1,000 for sure. Let's just say that. Wait, was this going to be a honey bun interview? Or?
Nah. I want to ask you about
we could make it one. I've got some honey bun stories.
I was going to ask, Nige,
Yes?
is this actually an episode about the honey buns and I didn't get a memo?
Don't you wish it were?
Yeah, because I would have been like, we finna put that Antoine song up in here.
So the breakfast thing is just this standard question we ask people when we're setting their mic levels. We actually asked Tax down to the studio to talk about clothing and about a particular piece of clothing he saw when he first got to San Quentin.
I came to this prison January 2019. And one of the first things I saw when I got off the bus was somebody in a bomber jacket. If anybody knows what a bomber jacket is, they're pretty stylish. Almost Letterman jacket type. They're fitted, they're tailored around the bottom, also around the sleeves and on the collar. And I thought they were prison issue.
Yeah, I've seen the actual prison issue jackets, and they are nothing like what he's describing.
If anybody knows what these CDCR blue jackets look like, they're pretty crappy. They look like a mix between trash and a raincoat.
They snap up the front. They're just like wearing a shapeless blue thing. Windbreaker.
Yeah, I wouldn't say shapeless. It's like a rectangle feeling going on. Almost like you're wearing a stiff dress.
Yeah, it's not flattering.
Those bomber jackets, on the other hand, though, they fit right.
I was like, well, how do I get one of those? Because that's what I want. And you couldn't find it. Nobody would tell you anything. It's kind of pretty hush-hush. It took me almost a year to figure out where I could get this jacket.
We should tell them why this is so hush-hush, Nige.
Yes. Well, what we're talking about is upgrades.
Pretty much.
Upgrades to a standard set of clothing the state gives you when you get to prison. And that includes stuff like T-shirts, boxers, pants, and shoes.
Right. And that's state property.
Mm-hmm.
And the state doesn't want you messing with it. And they definitely don't want you altering it so much that you can blend in with civilians and walk out the front gate. That's what's called escape paraphernalia.
Yes. But that bomber jacket, I don't want to say it's escape paraphernalia per se, but Earlonne, it's a pretty big alteration.
It's nice.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's nice.
And this is what they'll do. They'll take the elastic collar, the cuffs, the waistband from a state-issued sweatshirt and sew those into a state-issued windbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll end up with this cool-looking giddy-up, that kind of look like a bomber jacket. Top Gun.
Nice.
What was it, Goose and them?
Believe it or not, I've never seen that movie. And Tax really wanted one, so he kept asking around.
And finally, a year after he saw that first one, Tax sees a second bomber jacket. He knew that he was about to go to visiting, and he wanted to be styling for the pictures he'd take.
So he talked to the guy with the jacket.
I was like, hey, can I wear your jacket?
Oh, for the picture.
For the picture. Yeah. Took a picture in it. I liked the picture. And I sent it home. My family was like, oh, I like your little jacket. I'm like, yeah, me too.
Putting that jacket on, did it bring back any memories or feelings?
It just made me feel like I was not so much in prison. On the streets, I dress a certain way. My clothes are fitted, tailored. I don't wear anything that's oversized or undersized. I'm not a baggy clothes wearer. You kind of get that nostalgic feeling. Like, you know what? I miss how I look. And that's one thing about prison. It made me feel like I'm bummed out. I'm not me. I don't look like me. You kind of want some semblance of normality. So as much as you can escape this place, that's what I was feeling like. You know, all right, hey, I'm looking good. All right, I like this. So what I got to do to get this jacket, man? Yeah, do I got to sell my soul or anything like that? He says, you know what? You like that one? I'm like, I do. He said, just take it.
In return, Tax gives this guy the materials he needs to make himself a new bomber jacket.
So Tax has this jacket. He loves it, and he makes a vow to never part with it.
You couldn't grab this jacket without me noticing. I will absolutely not let this jacket go. It's going to stay with me until I leave here, at which point I will probably choose very carefully who I give it to.
So one day I'm asleep, it's early in the morning, I hear, and I'm going, what the fuck is that?
This is Jesse. He was Tax's bunkie at the time.
And I look up and there's two cops. He goes, which locker is yours? And I went, oh no. And I'm thinking I'm going to the hole. My stomach sinks. I'm like, oh. I go, this one. He goes, well, good, because we're looking for your bunkie. And I said, oh no. He goes, well, look, you can pack his shit up or we can do it. And I said, fuck. I just got up. I said, let me get it. I'll take care of it.
Tax was headed to the hole.
And when you get sent to the hole, all of your stuff gets packed up, and then the officers decide what they're going to let you have.
So Jesse was packing up all Tax stuff, and he was trying to do a nice job with it.
Yeah, I mean, E, we've talked about this on the show a lot. Your bunkie or cellie, that's an important relationship.
Hell yeah. And Jesse says Tax was a good bunkie.
I know his character. I know his program. Comfortable. That's a big thing in here. My TV got Fox, which shows Friday Night Wrestling. So I'd come back from group on Friday night. He'd be sitting on my bed watching my TV with a bowl of Deli Bites and a little rice bowl with some sweet and sour soy sauce and stuff, hoisin', and a Pepsi for me going, and he just pointed at the TV.
Oh, wait, we have it ready for you?
Yeah. And he'd have his bowl with his Pepsi, the splitter cable coming off for his headphones. He's watching TV. And he looks at me and he's like, and he just pointed at wrestling like it's on. And I knew already, like, all right, just sit down and eat and watch the wrestling show. You know what I mean?
Can I just say that's really sweet?
Yeah. So that's, you know what I mean? That's his character. So all the important stuff, TV, watch, radio, fan, you know, all these important items. Boom, 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 boom. I'm getting them in there. I started packing this shit up. Nothing was in my mind except what the fuck happened, where's he going, god damn, that sucks, all that kind of shit.
It wasn't until later that day that Jesse realized the one thing he'd forgotten to pack.
The whole bed was empty. Everything was gone except that jacket was hanging on the end of the bed. And I remember looking at it and I said, oh, his jacket. So I went to the officer who packed up his stuff and I said, hey, is he coming back? He goes, I think so.
So Jesse tucked that jacket away in the safest place he could.
But days went by. Tax didn't come back. A month passed, 2.
COVID happened, and things started to look pretty bad.
It hit the 6-month mark, and somebody was like, hey, man, what's up with Tax? Is he coming back? And I said, I don't know. Let me go check. So I went to the only officer I know that I have a good rapport with, like that anyway, and I said, hey, is he coming back? And he goes, I don't think so, man. I think it's been too long. I think they're going to ship him out. And when he said that, I walked back, and I took the jacket, right? Literally, I put it on to just try. I was like, I'm going to wear it. I'm going to wear this fucking coat.
You hadn't worn it the
Not
whole 6
once.
months.
Not the whole time. It just sat there the whole time. Didn't wear it. It was underneath my jacket. I don't even wear a jacket to chow. I'm Canadian. It ain't cold out here to me. I walk in the rain to chow. I don't care. I put the jacket on, and he's taller than me. Don't look right. It don't look like a bomber. So the dude next to me, he saw me with it on. He goes, hey, what's up with that jacket? Let me get it. And I was like, it's my bunkies, man. He was like, well, what's up with him? Is he coming back? I said, nah. He goes, let me get it. Who cares? I said, well, if he does come back, I need the jacket back.
You didn't sell it? You just gave it away?
No, yeah, I just wanted to see somebody wear it, like,
Okay.
and enjoy it.
How long were you in the hole?
6 months.
Oh.
Yeah, I was gone from my jacket for 6 months.
Erlon, literally 3 days after Jesse finally gives away.
It was just a temporary loan.
Okay, so 3 days after he temporarily loaned Tax's jacket out, Jesse sees Tax on the yard, fresh out of the hole.
I saw him on the yard, and the first thing that popped up, the only good news I could tell him was, hey, I still got your jacket.
Hey, your jacket's still here. When I heard it was still here, it was kind of like,
And he just snapped. His facial expression went, go get it.
Oh, you have the jacket? Yeah, I don't care about anything else but the jacket. I want the jacket.
Only problem is, Jesse doesn't actually, technically, have the jacket.
Right. He had given it to another guy, and that guy had spent those 3 short days he had the jacket washing it. I mean, kind of obsessively washing it and making it his own.
He washed the shit out of it, right? Used state soap the first time. Then he used laundry detergent the next time, Tide. Then he used Gain the third time to make it smell good. Hung it up and dried it. This was a Saturday, Sunday. He came back on a Monday. The jacket literally was just like fresh from the dry cleaners.
Somebody else had the jacket, and he took care of it. He washed it and everything. I was like, wow, okay, cool. But I want it back. Like, just give me the jacket back.
I said, well, I got to get it from the neighbor because he just washed it. He goes, well, go get it. And I said, well, he's asleep right now. Well, go get it.
It was apparent that I wasn't going to get the jacket back for a while. And at which point, I kind of flipped the switch.
Were there some strong words used?
They were interesting words, I'd say. What I said along the words was, I'll be in there later to get that jacket. and I fully intended to go in there and get the jacket.
Before I could get back to the building, I bent the corner. I heard, hey, I need that jacket, man. I'm going to get that jacket. If I don't get that jacket back, I'm coming up in there. And then I heard this little screeching voice go, Jesse, Jesse, Jesse.
I was trying to calm Tex down until he got the jacket back.
This is Quincy.
He was a screeching guy.
Right. He was yelling at Jesse to hurry up and get that jacket while he tried to keep Tax calm.
And he was livid. Oh, my God. Look, I'm going to let you know this right now. Pack up my stuff if I'm going to the hole. I was like, you just got here.
Let me get this straight. You were ready to go back to the hole where they would not even let you have the jacket for the jacket. Yes.
And so me being the Christian man that I am, I was like, Tax, let's just pray about this, man. Lord, we come to you and Tax is tripping and you want to calm him down. So any way possible, if you can de-escalate this and bring him back his jacket, send that jacket back. In Jesus' name, amen.
So Jesus got him his jacket back, right?
Well, actually, it was Jesse.
I gave this dude laundry soap for a month. I gave him like $2 in food, like $1 in a bar of soap. Oh my God, and he never let me live it up.
So if you gave it to the guy, why did you have to pay to get it back?
Because it was like, I'd be stealing it if I didn't compensate him for his time and his effort.
But what about the fact you made a contract, a stipulation that if your bunkie came back, you need the jacket back?
He did not remember that in that moment.
But you had kept it for 5 months and 27 days, and then 3 days after you gave it away, Tax comes back.
Literally like Jesus out of the tomb or something.
Quincy, the guy who prayed to the Lord while Tax was tripping, he and Tax did become friends.
And Quincy says now he never sees Tax without that jacket.
If you had to speculate, why is this jacket so emotionally important to him?
Seeing everybody in blues, and a lot of people do wear them, you start looking like the other person. And then all of a sudden, everything is monochromatic. You know what I mean? Everything looks the same. There's no standout. And I think this made him stand out. And it gave him a sense of freedom, and he was going to get that freedom back.
Do you know the term Bonnaroo? to get Bonnaroo to be Bonnaroo?
I don't.
What?
I don't.
This is Jada Raspberry. I met her at a criminal justice function when I was just out.
Earlonne, Raspberry is a perfect name for her.
Right.
She's kind of sparkly and fresh, like someone you just want to be around. And even if it's not the word she would use, I could tell she's definitely Bonnaroo.
Stay fly. Jada was in prison for 6 years, mostly at Valley State Prison for Women in Chowchilla, California.
Yeah, when you first get to prison, you don't really have anything. You're just trying to figure it out. So I'm like, how do I get a chain? How do I get earrings? How do I get pretty in here? I'm used to being sexy. I'm used to being glamorous all the time. And then inside, it's just like bland ass blue.
What did it feel like to have being sexy and being glamorous taken away from you?
It was terrible. It made me feel sad. It made me feel like, damn, like I really fucked up. Like in my mind, I was like, well, I'm supposed to be ugly in here. Being beautiful for a woman, I mean, it's natural. Like we're naturally supposed to be beautiful. We're beautiful beings. Like everything about us, we give birth. We are mothers, we're sisters, we're providers of the household. So like, why wouldn't you want to be beautiful doing all of that?
Jada said the first person who helped her get some of that beauty back after she got to prison was a roommate of hers.
So I had this roommate named Chocolate. She had been in for, a while, a couple times in and out. So she was used to like how to get fine in prison, right? So she would be in the mirror, she would be curling her hair and she'd be putting on makeup and she had these jeans from the box and I'd be looking like, where are y'all going? And she was like, come on, baby, we finna go to the main yard. I was young. I was 18. Like, what is the main yard? Chocolate was like, you're going outside with me. So she put this makeup on me and she had my hair like curled and I had on like this white tank top and these blue jeans and I had on my state shoes that was fresh. And so I get dressed and once I got dressed and looked in that mirror, I was like, oh, okay, she's back.
Soon, Jada was learning all the prison ingenuities, tailoring shirts to make them more form-fitting, using Kool-Aid to dye her socks and shoelaces pink.
Makeup, too. She used to make blue eyeshadow using watercolor pencils.
And that, like the bomber jacket, was not regulation.
So like with the blue watercolor, the officers would be like, where'd you get that from? And I'm like, where'd I get what from? And they're like, where'd you get that blue on your eyes? We were only allowed to have earth-toned eyeshadows. And I'm like, okay, well, blue is a part of earth. The sky is blue.
These women were getting seriously Bonnaroo'd, like all the way down to their dainties. Jada told us they'd figured out how to modify a bra so that it had more of a push-up effect. And there was one more modification I wanted to ask her about. I've also heard that women inside would modify their underwear. Is that true?
Can you talk about that? We made thongs.
Really?
We made yes, you can make thongs, you can make G-strings. So the first time I went to the main yard, it was my roommate's sister's birthday. And so they were out frying burritos. People had radios out there and music. And I'm watching people dance. But this one particular girl, she was dancing and I seen that she had on a thong. And I was like, how the hell did she have on a thong? How the hell did that happen? And so then that's when my other roommate was like, girl, I make those. And I was like, what do you mean you make those? And so they make them with the material, either with our muumuus. They take your measurements and then they basically just sew them for you. People will cut the pants and use that elastic or from a hair tie. And you have a really, really good pair of thongs like you bought them from Ross.
I definitely appreciate this conversation because it's a whole new insight into what's going on in the women's prison.
Yes, it goes down.
Yes.
It goes down.
Yeah. Nige, I used to talk to my sister Tyra about this, and she told me that when she was incarcerated, they used to have these parties, like hula parties. They used to have these fashion shows.
Yeah, and Jada told us those parties were a big part of her time, too.
Everybody was just so beautiful. Like, we had outside people come in and help us, and we had music, and we had the studs. They dressed up in tank tops. They made pants, and the women, we made dresses and skirts and two-piece outfits. It was just beautiful, and headbands. It was dope. It was dope. Yeah, we did that a lot. There was some seamstresses in there. I'm like, bitch, you need to get out and have your own clothing line. Like, you making G-strings and dresses and all this type of stuff. Like, it was wild.
What's making you cry right now?
Just thinking about those experiences. Like, I think about it, but I don't really talk about it out loud. And so to talk about it out loud is just bringing back all of those emotions, like just getting dressed and getting ready for the fashion shows, just being in community with people that I never thought that I would love is really touching, because I miss a lot of those people. I have a friend, her name is April Harris, and I love her so much. And sometimes I wish I could just go and lay on her bunk and just have her just rub my head and just tell me everything's gonna be okay, because that's what she would do. So just thinking about all of that and just the talks we had and just everything, it's just making me emotional.
Jada said she'd probably be in her feelings a little bit after this interview. And, I found myself thinking about our conversation with her a lot, too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, well, because I was thinking about all these ideas of beauty and being a woman and, all that stuff that she talked about. And I'm not really a girly girl, so I didn't quite relate to that need to be beautiful. But I just found it so interesting to think about all the different ways to be a woman. And then I have to admit, what she was talking about sounded really fun, like just enjoying your physicality and not worrying about it. And I felt like I'd kind of missed out on something, like some kind of sisterhood.
You know when I used to feel like that?
When?
When I used to sit in prison and watch step shows in colleges.
Step shows?
Yeah, step shows. It's like college fraternities, and they go in there and they do their thing. That.
Oh, love it. Yes.
I'm telling you, that was a little offbeat right there that I just did. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And they used to be in there doing it, and I used to just be sitting there watching it and feeling like, damn, I'm missing out on life.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like that kind of ties into what Jada's saying she misses from those prison parties, that same kind of exuberance.
Right. On that note, we're going to step out a little bit, and I'm going to show you something now.
Oh, no, all right.
And when we get back, we're going to talk about Bonnaroo in a prison cell.
Like it.
Nigel.
Hey, Yaya.
What up? What's up? I met this very artsy brother when I was in Old Folsom back in 2014. So imagine, to my utter surprise, a few months ago when I pulled up to the liquor store, right? And get out my car and turn and see this guy.
What? Out of
Yes.
context? He was just there?
Just out of context, he was
Wow.
just there. I thought I was looking at an apparition or something, right? And I kind of went backwards, and he looked
Yeah.
at me, and he kind of went backwards, and then we embraced into a little tight embrace. And so I couldn't wait to get him into the studio so that he can tell everybody about this particular type of Bonnarooing that he does. His name's Rico.
Let me guess. He's from Puerto Rico?
Absolutely. That's right, Nigel. He was born in Puerto Rico, and when he was 12 and a half, he moved to New York with his mom and 3 siblings.
Right. And Rico told us how, in their apartment in the Bronx, his mom tried to recreate a little bit of the home they just left.
She had a flag. She put the flag up, and she found a calendar with palm trees on it. Something to remind us of all the palm trees we had down there on the islands. We speak in our language. We listen to our music. And if we listen to the news, we're listening to the news in Spanish. It was a safe haven, a little piece of the island in the house. You know what I mean? Her emphasis was, in this house, you in Puerto Rico. When you leave here and go out, you're in the United States.
The home was a safe haven from what was happening outside.
Mm-hmm. And he said he was surprised to learn how dirty the streets of the Bronx were and the way the Italian and Irish kids in the neighborhood would taunt him and his siblings.
Every day, me and my brother used to say, why did my moms bring us to this, man?
Rico ended up getting into drugs and he started committing burglaries. When he was 45, he was sentenced to 40 years to life under California's 3 strikes law.
Can you tell us about the first time you walked into a cell?
I looked at it and it was like a cage, a cement cage with a door and a little window in the back, a little glass window to look out. I said, no, I got to have certain things in here to make it look pleasing to me and comfortable.
But it's not like you can go to Target or Bed Bath & Beyond or some shit like that.
Definitely not. Luckily, though, Rico had a hookup in the laundry.
What did that do for him?
When new clothes get delivered to the laundry, they arrive on trucks in these huge cardboard boxes.
Mm-hmm.
That cardboard piles up, so his friend starts tucking it away and passing it along to Rico.
Okay.
I had so much cardboard in my cell. I snuck it in the building and I started getting razors. I had to get straight razors to do that with. So I had to find out who had them, how to buy them.
A razor, I mean, you can get those in prison.
Yeah, you can get a regular razor.
Shaving.
Yeah, but that's not the kind he's talking about. He's talking about like a box cutter, underworld type of razor, Nige.
So he had his cardboard, his razors, he got glue, wax, and paint, and he started making shelves for cell walls.
And he also made containers for condiments and CDs and stuff like that.
All the stuff.
And not just that, Nige.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I remember walking up to Rico's cell and thinking, my God, this guy has a brick floor.
What?
A
What do you
brick
mean?
floor in prison,
How do
Nigel.
you get a brick floor in prison?
Well, it wasn't actually brick, Nigel.
Okay.
What he did was take a huge sheet of brown paper and stain it red.
Mm-hmm.
Then he drew a grid with a black marker to make it look like grout in between the brick. Then sealed the whole thing with wax.
Ingenious.
Ingenious.
And he said he made covers for his lockers and a cardboard lid for his toilet.
Then I painted it.
What'd you paint it? What
I put the Puerto Rican flag on it.
So he had his cell done up with all of these shelves, containers, that fancy-looking brick floor, and Puerto Rican flags all over the place.
Every time that I walked in my cell and I put on my music, I completely forget about the yard. This is my little world. Oh man, once I'm in my cell, I'm in my flavor. Put my salsa music on, that's my world. Every time I left there every morning, now I'm back vigilant in a hostile environment. And it happened to all of us.
I definitely can empathize with what he's saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
My cell was my sanctuary too, and I couldn't wait till the end of the day when I can make it back to the cell where I can just relax.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Decompress from the chaos of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand why people like Rico would want to make it like his own space, and kind of own it.
But not everybody in prison has Rico's interior decorating skills.
Exactly. And soon, word got out about those skills.
And he told us some of his earliest customers were guys from Southeast Asia, Cambodians and Laotians.
So I'm assuming no Puerto Rican flags for them.
Nope. They wanted pictures of the Buddha in their cells.
When he saw what I did to his cell, he said, "You good, man." And then he said, "Man, I'm back in Cambodia." To me, it gave me gratification just to see his face. And when I did it with the same enthusiasm that I had when I did mine.
Rico had a friend in the print shop that could print out these big decals he could stick on locker covers and toilet seat covers. He did lots of Raiders and 49er logos, and he also did a bison for a Native American guy.
And that full platinum plus detail job Rico says ran for $300 in canteen.
Woo.
And Rico was doing a lot of these jobs.
Baller.
Building 1 in Old Folsom holds 1,200 inmates, 600 cells.
How many cells out of them 600 do you think you worked on?
That's a good question. Wow. About 300?
That's a lot of Bonnaroo cells.
Yeah, especially when you consider that this was not, exactly legal.
Your prison cell, that's state property too. And so what Rico was doing definitely was against the rules.
But Rico did 300 cells, so obviously somebody's turning a blind eye.
Definitely, Nige. Rico has some latitude because of his job as a housing clerk.
All right, you got to explain that job.
So consider this, Nigel. Rico lived in a building with over 600 cells, times 2.
Right.
That's 1,200. On any given day, a bunch of those people are going to be having some kind of issue. They want to change cells, maybe have a conflict with their bunkie. So all of the hoopla, that comes to Rico first instead of the COs.
So I had a leeway that most people don't have. And I had that trust with the officers that I can tell them, open up cell so-and-so. They pull the bar, open up cell so-and-so, leave it open, because I'm going to work in there. He said, what you going to do? I said, I'm going to Bonnaroo his cell.
But even with that leeway, sometimes COs are going to do what COs are going to do.
Oh, definitely. Sometimes those cells got busted up. I remember one time a cell was getting searched next to me, and then I started hearing these loud crashing sounds. And I'm like, what the hell is that? It was a CO hitting Rico's shelves with their batons and karate kicking them off the walls.
That's that quality craftsmanship there. Those shelves aren't given up without a fight.
Yeah, and Earlonne, you know what else? Every time a CO busted up one of Rico's designs, he's like, cha-ching.
Because that's going to get him hired to do it all over again.
Yep, and Rico told us about one group that was always getting hit by COs.
That particular group were my best customers. They're controlled on the 3rd tier. They used to tear their cells up twice a week, sometimes, looking for contrabands. And we already had the pieces done and painted and ready. I did a lot of work for them, a lot.
Rico got released from prison in February 2020.
Yeah, and so how's he doing now?
Well, I called to check in on him a few days ago. And Nigel, he's doing really well. He's here in the Bay Area.
And has he decorated his new digs yet?
Nah, not yet. He's actually still in transitional housing, but he is working with his hands as a brick mason.
I bet this time it's with real bricks.
Definitely. And you know what else, E?
What's that?
He's still dreaming of Puerto Rico.
Indeed.
I love where I came from so much. You have people that, I don't know how to express it, but that little bitty island is my life. And before I leave this planet, I gotta go back. It's like a detachment took place. It still lingers in my heart.
Tell me, what's your name and tell me what you're into.
My name? He said, tell me what's your name and tell me what you're into. My name is Kisasi Hill.
Kisasi Hill. Nige, we go back like 4 flats.
Really?
Juvenile Hall.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wanted him in this episode, Nige, because I think sometimes Bonnaroo is about survival.
I totally get that.
Real talk.
Yep.
It's deep. I mean, like, there's time in prison when the system is trying to break you down, or that's how you feel.
Yeah.
And you have to assert yourself. It's an act of resistance. Like saying, I exist.
Yeah.
I went to prison at 16 years old, 3 days after my 16th birthday. Their means of teaching me a lesson was to put me in solitary confinement for 98 days. And in that 98 days, every dimension that I was as a person visited me in that space. The walls contracted and expanded daily like I breathed. You know, sometimes it felt like they were coming in on me, crashing in on me. And sometimes I felt like, you know, I can knock them down. I had the strength to knock them down. The one thing that kept me sane throughout all of that, I would write poetry. And I would write poetry on every piece of paper that I can get my hands on. I would get inmate request forms. And I would write poetry on the back of inmate request forms. And it was a trip because I used to send inmate request forms and 602s trying to get a hearing and trying to get out, but they wasn't going anywhere. So I started using them as paper for poetry. And then they stopped giving me inmate request forms and told me that I was destroying state property. Right? So now I'm like, I ain't got no paper. So I started writing poetry on the walls. And I ended up covering all the walls in poetry, even the ceiling. And they sent the psych in to look at the ceiling to see if I was, threatening or talking about suicide. And they wanted to know what I was putting on the walls, right? But it was just poetry. All of it was poetry. And to me, poetry was the magic I used to keep the walls in place, to keep the walls so they wouldn't crash in on me. My habitats like iron woods, body tatted, a pup running with wolves, but I was searching for a part of me still good. The graffiti on the wall says no warning shots. And the will to survive now is all I got, not to mention I've been praying a lot. But the rage got my emotions in a knot, like a burner in the place of a Glock or a best friend shot on a prison yard smoking pot, listening to Pac. Hard lessons at knife point I'm forced to learn, while shot callers doing shoot terms, politicians treat the subject like a germ. Meanwhile, breath is my only concern.
And not. You know, we've been hearing about all the hustling and workarounds incarcerated people do to customize themselves and their surroundings.
Yes.
But every now and again, really rarely, a Bonnaroo kind of lands in your lap, you know? Just a gift from a Bunna Claus. Bonnaroo Santa Claus.
I love that. I know. And that is exactly what happened to one of our new Inside colleagues, Tony.
My name is Tony Tafoya.
And Tony, what did you say you had for breakfast today?
So the cinnamon roll was absent of cinnamon. It had like a Victorian icing on top, so it was really just powdered sugar, water, and they drizzled. They soaked this sweet bread in sugar, and it was about the size of it was actually probably 20% larger than a Cinnabon.
That's huge.
It's huge. Oh, I was so excited. We get them once a month.
Nige.
Yes?
Again with this shit?
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I know I got off track. We actually didn't bring him in to talk about sweet pastries either. Can you tell us about your sheet situation?
Oh, my sheets. Okay, so I don't know what it was, but I got so lucky when I got off the bus. So when I got to this prison, in your normal bedroll that they always give you, they give you 2 sheets, a pillowcase, a blanket, and that's it. That's really all they give you to walk up the stairs with. And when I got to my cell, I opened up my bedroll and there was this sheet. And it was the most amazing. I was like, I've never felt like, what is this? And it has the tag that says 100% cotton on it. And
so it's not a PIA sheet?
No.
It's not the sheet I have?
No.
It's not a prison sheet?
It's not a prison sheet. This is probably the best sheet I've ever had in my entire life.
Wait, so how long have you had this sheet?
I've had this sheet since the day I got off the bus, September 6, 2019.
How do you take care of it and how do you hold on to it? Because it's my understanding most people take their sheets and bring it to laundry, and then they get new sheets.
Yes.
Yep. Trade them in.
So what
Trade
would
them in.
happen if you did that with your sheet?
I would lose this sheet. I mean, this sheet means more to me than anything.
Tell us, how do you take care of this special sheet?
So this sheet, every Monday, I do laundry. So in the morning, I take the sheets off my bed and I soak them in the bucket. And in the packages, we're allowed to buy detergent. And so for years it was Gain or Tide, and which is wonderful. I mean, that's a luxury in itself. And then I just wanted to branch out, so I started getting different detergents to see what was what. And then out of nowhere, in last quarter, they released the Gain with the essential oils in it. They are magnificent. And so I get the lavender and chamomile one. And I soak my sheets for like 4 or 5 hours in this. And then later on, I will wash them and I will hang them up to dry before count. And by the time The Bachelor comes on, they're dry.
So how does it feel when you slide into those sheets?
It is when you get into a bed with clean sheets, it makes you feel like you're sleeping on a cloud.
It's crazy,
It's the best feeling.
Because I'm sitting there, I forgot that feeling of fresh sheets.
Sheets?
Yeah, the PIA sheets are like sandpaper.
They are.
And so you don't get that fresh, like that, like kind of like this.
Yeah, you need to have
funny,
2 or
like
3.
this coldish but nice temperature.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm feeling it right now.
I could see his face when you were
Yeah.
doing it. I was like, he's having some reverie here.
I got to ask you a personal favor, actually. After the next laundry day, can I borrow your sheet for a week?
No. Sorry.
Could he just come and touch it?
You can come touch it, yeah.
Yaya, one last question.
Yep.
Where did the word Bonnaroo come from in the first place?
So, Nigel, I looked it up,
Uh-huh.
and it's a French Creole slang that means best on the streets.
No kidding.
Yes, definitely.
So I know you've let your Bonnaroo go now that you're on the outside. But since you suggested this episode in the first place, I guess you were always Bonnarooing back when you were inside?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
I never believed in tricking out a sale because I didn't believe in beautifying a place that I personally felt was inherently ugly. And so I wanted to keep it just like it was. When I was in there, the thing that I wanted to beautify most or Bonnaroo most was myself. And so I spent time in that ugly cell Bonnarooing my mind, body, and soul.
Wait a minute. You are saying you didn't Bonnaroo a single thing?
Okay, Nigel, there was a pair of boots.
I told you he was a fibber.
So listen, I bought a pair of boots, Old State boots from a youngster in Quentin.
Yeah.
In 2019.
Right.
And so the youngster was just walking around in them. I'm like, hey, dude, you want to sell those boots? He's like, no. And I was like, okay. A week later, he gets at me and say, hey, man, I'm going out to court. You still want to buy these boots? Charged me $25 for some boots he paid $15 for.
Mm-hmm.
Took him down to JoJo, the military veteran who know how to spit shine them things to perfection.
Yeah.
He put a few coats of brown on there, and I had a pair of visiting boots.
So when your family came to visit, you had something nice to show up in.
Yeah, but also I think too, like when I put those shiny visiting boots on, there was something about walking to the visiting room in those shiny shoes and the clicks that they make on the concrete and people noticing them and nodding their head in approval that did kind of make you walk with your head held high.
Nice.
But other than the boots, I didn't Bonnaroo anything else in prison, even though I love the spirit of how other people decorated the prison, decorated themselves in order to bring some sense of normalcy to that. But just for me, it was just keep it the way it is, understand the significant impact that it has on me negatively, build from that, and wait to get out in Bonnaroo.
Earlonne, we just got some really good news.
Yes, we did. Remember, when we first started this podcast, one of our submissions was a story called Misguided Loyalty.
Yes.
That was about Tommy Shakur Ross.
Yes.
And it ended up being our second episode in our first season.
So why don't we let Tommy tell us the good news?
Definitely.
My name is Tommy Shakur Ross, and I've been incarcerated for a little over 36 years.
36 years. What just happened?
Well, 8:30 this morning, October the 8th, 2021, I went to the board and I was found suitable for parole. You know, I just came back less than 30 minutes ago, so it's still sinking in. Man, it's surreal, right? Because I kind of felt that like my time was coming to an end here. As I walked around, it was like a spiritual feeling. As I was coming down here, I saw Antoine Banks at the entrance, and he was actually the first person that I told that I was found suitable. And I'm looking at him right now, man, and that's a good look of Freedom. Freedom look good on Antoine Banks. I'm gonna be looking for a job too.
It's like if you know somebody read that, look up.
The realest advice a person can give you getting out is patience, time, and stillness. Because everything else gonna come. Everything else gonna come. It's like double dutch. You got to wait. You got to, you know what I'm saying? Look at the rhythm, find it, and hop in. They're gonna expect you to know everything. Self-checkout is gonna freak you out.
Self-checkout? What the
Yep. Self-checkout, like all stores have self-checkouts. And that's basically where you just take your item, you go scan it, and you pay. Pay yourself, bop, and you leave. Yeah. Everything is like go, go, go.
That definitely will freak me out.
What's it going for? Wait, first of all, at what point are you going to start giving stuff away, and what can I have?
Check this out. I'm not gone until I'm gone. When I'm on the other side of the gate and I can look at Antoine Banks with the members only and be like, hey man, let me borrow that coat. let me borrow that coat. Then I'll know when I'm going home. But until then, man, I ain't giving up nothing. Hey, but I do want to say this, man. I'm really grateful. I'm humble. And I can't wait to be on the other side of these walls, man. One of the things I really want to do, that I look forward to doing, is climbing Mount Tam and looking back down at San Quentin. Because I often stood on the yard and looked up at Mount Tam from the yard of San Quentin. And I can't wait to conquer Mount Tam. Hiking.
This episode of Ear Hustle was produced by John Yaya Johnson with Nigel Poor, Earlonne Woods, Rasan New York Thomas, Rashid Zinneman, Bruce Wallace, and Tony Tafoya.
It is sound designed and engineered by Antoine Williams, with music by Antoine, David Jossi, and Rashid Zinneman.
Amy Standen edits the show.
Shebnam Sigmund is our digital producer.
And Julie Shapiro is the executive producer for Radiotopia. Ear Hustle would also like to thank Warden Ron Bloomfield.
And as you know, every episode of Ear Hustle has to be approved by this guy here.
This is Lieutenant Sam Robinson, the Public Information Officer at San Quentin State Prison. And for, probably about 12 years, I worked with Bonnaroo, and I didn't have that story about how Bonnaroo got his name. All I heard was that, hey, I'm always Bonnaroo. You know, that I've always dressed up. I've always dressed nice. I didn't hear that other backstory that he didn't even know what it was. He just went with it. So that was intriguing. That was amusing. I enjoyed that. I really did enjoy this episode. And so with that, I will say that I approve this episode.
Hold up. Would you consider yourself one of the people that's Bonnaroo, Lieutenant Robinson?
I would say that I am Bonnaroo probably about 90% of the time. When I'm at home, I can lounge, I can put on some sweats. But definitely when I step out the house, I am Bonnaroo. I'm the real Bonnaroo.
This podcast was made possible with support from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, working to redesign the justice system by building power and opportunity for communities impacted by incarceration. Ear Hustle is a proud member of Radiotopia from PRX. Radiotopia is a collection of independent listener-supported podcasts, some of the best podcasts around. Hear more at radiotopia.fm.
I'm Nigel Poor.
I'm Earlonne Woods.
I'm John Yahya Johnson.
Thanks for listening.
Radiotopia.